Time today. Guess who's on time today? Guess who's on time today? It's your boy Soul Expression on time today. They ain't even know what I came to say. I ain't even here trying to play. I'm just trying to show you how I can do what I do when I get to the POD cast space. What's up, everybody? I hope you are doing so very well. Look at that. And the microphone stand thing didn't mess up. It didn't shift when I just hit the mic on accident with the chair. It's amazing. Guys, I had a wonderful conversation on Telegram last night. It was quite philosophically charged. And I love shit like that. Because, so basically, I'm in this Telegram group where they talk about all sorts of topics that may be broadly categorized as esoteric knowledge. Okay, not necessarily specific occult knowledge or specific authors or specific. They just taught we they. I just got there, so I'm still kind of my brain still says they, even though I'm in. I'm obviously in the group now, and I had my first conversation. But it was a very philosophically charged conversation because these people are already into alternative sciences, alternative spiritual pathways, you could say, interests, if you will. Um, some of them consider themselves to be more for their soul to be more so of a different dimension, uh, a different galaxy, if you will. I don't know. But regardless, we had a conversation about the things that we talk about on this channel. And if you are here, good people, then you are in for some real conversations. We talk about religion, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talk about natural law, first and foremost. We talk about money, talk about anarchy and culture, and excuse me, and how mankind is manipulated by forces that do not have our best interests at heart because perhaps they are completely evil. But through all of that talking, we are not bashing people for following traditions and or having a religion or anything like that. We are simply examining the psychological affects and effects of the stories that we have the most faith in, the ones we have the most stake in, and how those stories help shape society. Now, that examination has to sit right alongside an honest look at the current human condition, which honestly is slavery. Okay, government is slavery. And the question that we have to always come back to is what can actually be improved with a proper understanding of the inner storyteller and how it works. Now, if any of that makes you uncomfortable, makes you a little angry, or makes you uneasy in any way, please be assured and reassured that although you are encouraged to stay, you are, of course, my liege, welcome to leave at any time. Now, I am excited to get into this conversation. Basically, this script was inspired by the conversation. Um, yeah, today we're getting back into the religion of monetary value because that was the core of the conversation. I actually started what I shared in the group is the religion of monetary value part 3. And I said, I think this is the most important thing for us on earth to really, really understand right now is the information in this video. Uh, and um, and I said why, a little bit about why. Gotta clean my my other screen. There's some stuff on it all of a sudden. But I introduced the video, and I said, I said some words about what did I say? Let me see. I have Telegram up here, and I'm not going to share the screen because I don't want to show anybody's name or handle or anything like that. Let me see. But I start the conversation off, and I say, oh, went past it, didn't I? Did I go past it? I think I did. Yeah. Okay. Scroll back down. Sorry, I went too far. Okay. I say my opinion is that this information, talking about the video, part three of this very series, The Religion of Monetary Value, that this information regarding money not being real is what's most important to understand fully and start local rebellion in response to the consequential tyranny resulting from our acceptance of the monetary systems since the very first one in ancient Sumer. And I'm not trying to incite any violence with any of that, of course. Wasn't trying to incite it. I was simply talking of, sharing an opinion regarding things that are factual and things that are likely and historical, right? Historically, there have been thousands of local rebellions that formed in response to tyranny. So, anyway, just wanted to clarify for legal reasons that I am not inciting violence. I'm not suggesting any specific actions be taken by any specific people in any specific region at all. I am simply examining the stories that we have the most faith in life. So, I want to share this conversation that I recently had that I think is one of the more useful things that I can bring to this episode because the person that I was speaking with is right about certain things, right? Not I don't want to share this because I owned somebody and the person and I was debating and the person that I was talking to was just dead wrong um and all of that. They weren't. They weren't. Not entirely. Um but I want to share because the questions that they asked me are exactly the questions that need to be asked. And fielding them out loud helped me discover what I actually believe at a level that I hadn't fully articulated before. In this conversation that I had on Telegram, you can actually, if you're on the app on your phone, you can hold down a little microphone icon and speak and do voice replies and voice messages. So, and there's no, I don't think there's a time limit on it. It'll go like for very, very, very long. So, a lot of my responses in this conversation were voice notes, and in preparation for this episode, I transcribe. I had a what's it called? There's an app that my wife. There's a website, pardon me, that my wife sent me to so that I can transcribe all of my voice replies and um, see what I said in preparation for making this script. So fielding these questions out loud, these very, very good questions out loud, helped me discover what I actually believe, right? And that's one of the reasons why I've been practicing, doing this podcast as well as practicing speaking about this out loud to people recently in general. Because when I write something, I have to edit it, right? When I'm writing and either a typo or a better way to say what I'm saying comes to mind, I stop what I'm writing and I edit that and then I get back to it. But that process more so expresses without a lot of discovery, so to speak, right? When you're in the moment speaking out loud and watching yourself do it and trying to get across your ideas in a way that they'll be understood by the person listening to you, you discover what you really think in a deeper way than when you reply by writing. It's just something about it. Just like why, same reason why I go live for my podcast instead of recording and then editing and whatnot. Because when I'm live on the internet and I'm already, we're live on YouTube on two channels, that's a completely different experience than if I'm recording something and I know as I'm recording it in the back of my head that there's going to be an opportunity to cut out mistakes, to come in and record something else the same day and splice it in, and nobody would be the wiser as to what time it was, right? I have two lights, um, two I have lighting in this room, so you can't really tell, especially if I were to turn on the main light, you can't really tell if it's daytime or nighttime. So, so just yeah, recording something, writing something down before it's actually delivered to the person that needs to understand what you're saying is a much different experience as far as discovering what you really think than, simply saying things out loud. But all that said, we had a wonderful conversation. So, the first thing that we have to get into is called the scalability question. The conversation started with a little pushback on something that I had said in part three. The person's argument was essentially this: scalability is the insurance policy of legacy. The changes you make today only survive your lifetime if they grow large enough to sustain themselves without you. And they proposed a sequence of how genuine change happens. They said, harmony first, then scalability, then efficiency, then policy. And said you had to start somewhere. Oh, excuse me. Let me edit that in real time. Somebody else who agreed with both of us laid out that sequence: harmony, scalability, efficiency, policy, or whatever. And that was their only contribution. The rest of the conversation is just between me and this other person, I believe. Yeah. So so let's say clearly that sequence is correct. Harmony first, scalability second, efficiency third, policy, if any, fourth and last. It's the order that every institution that has ever reproduced the thing it was trying to replace got backwards, right? That's the order that every institution that has ever reproduced the thing it was trying to replace got backwards. They went to scalability first, right? Scalability, then efficiency, then policy, and harmony is an afterthought, right? Harmony never even came to the planning table because the structure was already in place before the consciousness that would need to inhabit it had developed enough to make the genuine choices that it needed to make. But here's where I clarified some things. I said scalability as a value has been extracted from its original context. Its original context is solving a specific problem in a specific place. And scalability was put on top of that origin, solving a specific problem in a specific place, and scalability was turned into this artificial value, this value to business people, including myself, right? It became a value. I've become aware that it's not a real value, that real value is only in work and knowledge, right? And love, you could say. But what we were conditioned to believe is if it scales, it's good. It must be good if it scales. If it distributes widely and um, everybody gets one, then that distribution is evidence of progress of some kind. That's what we've been taught to believe. You know, something that was a practice, it was an invention. It's legitimately an invention. It's not natural. And it was a practice that spread to all corners of the earth and is still utilized in all corners of the earth by every country. Slavery. Slavery is the most scalable product ever created. Might be the most profitable ever created as well, although I don't know that empirically. But what slavery has gotten us is not good at all, right? Comfort does not automatically equal good either. And excuse me, and we've lost that perspective. A lot of people who say that comfort doesn't equal good still believe that comfort does equal good, right? That perspective is we're just, especially in like in America and in first world countries and in, just in these places where we're so locked into the internet that the suffering all around us is, we're just blind to it. We're desensitized to the suffering. It is completely normal to ask somebody around you how you doing and they say stressed out. It doesn't alarm you at all, right? It's you know so we're so far into comfort. It's not real comfort, but comfort things, comfort technology, that we can even be taught about, dopamine resets and cleanses, spiritually cleansing yourself of um, instant gratification and whatnot. And but we still believe under underneath saying out loud that, oh, comfort doesn't always equal good. We still believe it does, right? Our actions say that we do. And another illusion produced by the scalability question is that more is always good, right? The right move is always to take whatever worked locally and distribute it as widely as possible so that anybody with a similar problem can use this method, this technology, this both. Uh, but scaling, scaling comfort without scaling awareness and consciousness produces slavery, produces what we have, produces a differentiation, a differentiator in classes of people, right? Those that are pursuing the comfort without conscious, and those who are pursuing the consciousness. And then there's game theory. A civilization extraordinarily efficient at delivering stimulation and extraordinarily inefficient at producing genuine human flourishing is the result of societies that are engaged in scalability over harmony, scalability, efficiency, and policy over harmony. What I'm aiming at is a complete paradigm shift, right? Not at any extreme pace or anything, not overnight, but in totality, starting from recognition, awareness, starting from gaining the knowledge, gaining the grammar slowly through time. My phone's alerting me that I'm live on YouTube. Right? Understanding things at deeper and deeper levels. That comes first. Then, after we reach a critical mass of people who understand the information, who understand the truth, especially regarding money not being real. Once we understand it, then going about the business of creating new technologies and distributing them accordingly, but in a much more harmonic way to nature's cycles, to nature itself, right? Clip that. So now, let's talk about what money has actually done. The conversation moved into the implementation question after that, right? The implementation question is always very important. If not money and not necessarily government, how do the day to day, large scale coordination projects actually work? Right? We have food, we have infrastructure, right? When you build a building, when you build a house, you want to take the land into consideration, the weather into consideration, all of these things, soil. And then electricity, plumbing, utility infrastructure. You want all of these things. Disputes, right? Interactions with people outside of your uh, interactions with people that are not everyday interactions. How do you settle and account for transactions if not with some form of incentivized, valued instrument? Here's my honest answer. Okay. You ready? You ready? Like the video if you're ready to hear my answer. Here we go. Government and the religion of monetary value have never, ever been required for any project to get done, large or small. Monetary value, in fact, and indeed, has never exchanged hands once because monetary value does not exist. Accounting exists. Paper money exists. Digital money exists. Whatever that means. It does. We can see numbers doing things on a screen when they're programmed to do when you click and hit enter and whatnot. But they only exist on paper and in digital spaces. There is no measurable, provable, significant thing about monetary value that has ever been required for any project to get done outside of somebody with a gun to your head saying you have to do the monetary value dance before you can do the project, before y'all can do the project, whatever it is. For any problem to be solved, for any idea to come to life, all you need is work and knowledge. You need knowledge, how to do it, what to do it with, all of that, right? What might happen once you do it. You need knowledge and you need work. You need to work. Do the work, find other people to help do the work, delegate the work. The work has to get done. Whether a machine is doing the work, a lot of times Mother Earth does a lot of the work, right? But the work has to get done. So you need work and knowledge, and then boom, the idea is alive. Outside of just in idea land, right? The real resources are work and knowledge. That's it. That's what has always actually done the projects. The accounting system, which is placed on top of work and knowledge, claimed credit for enabling work and knowledge. But the creative capacity of the human mind, it was never and can never be the product of arbitrary accounting, no matter how compliant with the rules regarding accounting it is. Creative capacity is not born from money or from monetary concepts. Our creative capacity is not hindered by a lack of a ruling class telling us at gunpoint what to do and what to think. We are figuratively, we are not limited by lacking a small group of people who say that they have a divine right to rule over their peers. And there is always a layer of persuasion, and if that doesn't work, coercion, that goes into a culture accepting the religion of monetary value, accepting the notion that monetary value is real and can be legitimately superimposed over real value and then treated as life or death as far as seriousness, even though it's completely fake. And this is true every single time. Okay, there's layers of persuasion and coercion every single time a culture accepts the religion of monetary value. No population has ever voluntarily adopted a money system after full examination of what it actually is. At least there's no evidence of that. It arrives through mind control, right? The acceptance of the religion of monetary value, the ROMV, the ROMV, necessitates so first you have the persuasion, the coercion, the manipulation, the word magic, right? The means through which they can control the minds of the culture so that not only do they accept the idea, but they accept a version, some denomination of the religion of monetary value into their culture at large, creating by necessity a governing body, whether that governing body be through like royal families type deal, monarch empire type deal, or government, modern government. And then the acceptance of the religion of monetary value necessitates enslavers, people that are enslaving other people, people who will enforce with violence, coercion, manipulation, sometimes murder, the arbitrary, ever changing rules that they set for transactions in order to maintain the illusion that monetary value is actually changing hands, that monetary value is actually generating ideas for people in their consciousness. It never has. Clip that. A part of the conversation, a part of my replies when I was in the voice notes replying, got into this apple for an orange, orange for an apple conversation, because the and this was still kind of responding back and forth within the context of day-to-day, implementation of these grand ideas, right? Our whole life is money and government. How can we have such a grand idea that money and government not only are illegitimate, but also like don't even really exist, right? They only exist in our minds, and because of the costumes and the word magic, our minds make it real, right? We have buildings, we have people that claim things out loud with their mouths, but the reality is we have a bunch of adults playing, making costumes, and playing roles that we don't have to play. We don't have to do any of this accounting stuff. We don't have to necessarily do any of this, um, anything at all. Our agreement to form countries and form governments and elect politicians and have police forces and all of that is because we don't want the responsibility of being human beings. Anyway, let's get into the apple and the orange debacle. So, the most honest way that I know to describe, that I know how to describe what is actually happening is when people exchange things. Let's use an apple and an orange as an example. If I give you an apple, Do you automatically owe me an orange? No, right? If I give you an apple, you don't owe me an orange. If I gave you an apple, then I gave you an apple. That is what is true about that. And if you give me an orange, or let's say a haircut, or your time, right? Your company, or your help with a project that I'm working on, regardless of what you give me, if I gave you an apple and then you give me something in return, you give me an orange in return, then you are doing that in the present. You are choosing to give me an orange. You are choosing to give me your time, to give me a haircut, to give me a whatever. And that's what's true about that. Full stop. Now, of course, there may be, and most of the time will be, a resulting frequency, feeling of reciprocity, harmony, and all of that in the act of you providing something in return, especially if it's of somewhat equal value, like an orange for an apple. And that frequency is valuable and worth cultivating as much as possible. But nature doesn't require that an orange be given because an apple was given, or that a favor was given because another favor was given to you first. Nature does not require that. Projects getting done does not require that. Ideas coming to life does not require reciprocity at all. Now, other things do require some reciprocity, like building strong trust bonds, people to people. That does require reciprocity on a lot of levels. But there is no such real thing as a transaction, a monetary transaction. There never has been a transaction that actually took place in nature, including with human beings. Human beings have never done anything but perform what a transaction would look like if it was real. That's it. In real natural terms, which are the only terms that actually exist, the only thing that we have ever done is share and work for ourselves and others. Share our stuff and work for ourselves and others. That's it. We share when we want to. Even if we feel like we're obligated because there's some sort of debt, even if we feel like if we didn't pay, we could be thrown in a cage. The real thing, the real absolute truth about the matter is that we eventually choose to share. Eventually, we choose to pay back, whether at gunpoint or out of the kindness of our hearts. We have to make the choice before it gets done, right? And if somebody steals from us and pays the other person after stealing from us, well, they chose to do that, okay? And we wouldn't choose death over choosing not to solve a problem that locally we all have the shared obligation to overcome, right? We wouldn't choose, without the structure of a transaction, to just go hungry ourselves and watch our children and watch our mothers and watch our brothers and friends go hungry and sisters go hungry. We wouldn't. We wouldn't just choose death over work and knowledge. The cooperation that we talk about, with people, well, what'll inspire people to cooperate? The cooperation was always voluntary at its root. Again, transaction, the performance of what a transaction would look like if it was real is what we do. But that's just a performance. Nature doesn't require it. The ideas don't require it. The solutions to the problems don't require it. Transactions are just this fake game that we play. The cooperation was always voluntary, even when the coercion surrounding it made it feel mandatory. The coercion is just the religion of monetary value enforcing Okay, hold on. I gotta sign back into my little thing here. Sorry. The way that I have my camera set up, my arms are all the way outstretched to touch the laptop now. Okay, boom. Put this at where it was, and then apples and oranges. Okay. So, you know, if you gave me something, I naturally wouldn't I guaranteed would not choose death over paying you back, over reciprocating your kindness. Similarly, we would not, as a people, as a human family, I should say, as a people sometimes sounds like black people, we would not, as a human family, all just choose death over solving our local problems together. And what we have to keep in mind and realize is that all we've ever done was choose to work, to serve ourselves and other people in some way, shape, or form. We choose to share and we choose to work for ourselves and others. The fiction of the transaction required the enforcement, right? The religion of monetary value, the fiction, requires the real life human being, natural human being, enforcement of the fiction. It requires force. The enforcement requires slavery, and the slavery requires the mind control. So it starts with the mind control, moves into slavery, and then you create an apparatus of enforcement, which is all necessary before you get to the transaction. I hope that's very, very clear picture, because the next thing we're going to talk about is self-governance and anarchy are not two different things. So clip that. Now, someone in this conversation referenced the work of Vincent Ostrom and Eleanor Ostrom. They were researchers who spent many decades documenting how human communities naturally develop many layers of self governance, and that these often outperform both centralized government and what people call anarchy, which is great, which is awesome sauce. But I want to address this framing as, self governance outperforming both centralized governance and anarchy. If you separate self governance and anarchy as two different categories in this context, in most contexts, placing self governance somewhere in the safe middle between, don't do that, placing self governance somewhere in the middle between centralized control on one end and dangerous chaos on the other end, then you have already accepted the manufactured premise that we should not accept. You're arguing about how much external authority is acceptable rather than whether the category of external authority is legitimate at all before you get to what's acceptable and what's not. Genuine anarchy, especially in its etymological, etymological. There we go. I gotta always separate it in my head and see like logical or logically as its own word, or I will never get etymological correct on the first go round. Anyway, genuine anarchy in its philosophical sense, right? Not its media sense, not what you get from schooling, government schools, but in its genuine etymological and philosophical sense only means no rulers, right? Anarchy means no masters, no slaves, no rulers. It does not mean no rules, right? It does not mean no coordination. It does not mean no shared principles, no community standards, right? It means to be without a ruling class claiming some sort of legitimate dominion over their peers without their genuine ongoing consent, right? You do have the free will to be a slave on purpose. That your free will is not taken from you, but it's immoral to be a slave on purpose because it perpetuates the idea that causing harm and, ego inflation are to be had by anybody, to be held by anybody. So, what does this mean? Well, to me, it means that genuine self governance and genuine anarchy are not two different points on a spectrum. They are the same exact thing. Self governance is what anarchy looks like from inside a functional community. Anarchy is what self governance looks like from outside when you remove the false premise that rulers are required to enforce to make rules. Pardon me. And now the Ostroms are not wrong. You know what I'm saying? This is not about me versus them or me versus like trying to score a point against the person I was talking to because they brought up these authors. The Ostroms documented hundreds of cases of communities successfully managing shared resources, from fisheries to forests to irrigation systems, um, groundwater basins, and all of these things without centralized governing authorities and without collapsing into chaos. What they found is those communities already had mutual accountability, moral mutual accountability, right? They had genuine opt-in. They had genuine revocability of consent, which is self-governance, which is anarchy, if we're being honest with ourselves. So I hope that's clear, right? That I'm not targeting the authors. I'm not trying to say that the person that brought this up in the conversation was somehow not equipped to be in the conversation. I'm just saying that if you separate anarchy and self-governance, you already have the wrong idea, respectfully. Now, on community, agreement, and natural law, we got to talk about some stuff. So clip that. Boom. Let's address something else that came up. The idea that participating in a community requires agreeing on fundamental principles, right? The idea that participation in a community requires agreeing on fundamental principles. I disagree. I don't think that is true. Um, the person I was mainly talking to asserted that being in genuine community, participating in community, requires agreeing to certain fundamental principles, or that that's a universal rule that is widespread and it's like a good rule, like it's not an immoral rule. And I don't agree. I do not agree that that's a rule, or that's a rule we should be following, and I don't agree that that's naturally required, that people agree on certain fundamental principles. You do not have to be aligned on morality or moral mindset to participate in community. What you have to do if the objective of the community is a more free society, a society whose inhabitants experience a higher degree of freedom on a daily basis, what you have to do if you have objectives, of shared objectives in a community, is act in accordance with the natural laws of moral consequence in pursuit of your objectives. Not because you agree to be in accordance with moral consequence, but but because the objective requires it. The shared objective that you have of having a more free society requires people to live moral lives. And if you are moving against the objective that the rest of the community is moving toward, well, that will bear certain fruits on its own. That will bear its own consequences, social and otherwise. Not necessarily only because it's administered by a governing body, right? Natural law will produce the consequences because natural law is already operational everywhere at all times and binding to all beings. Which leads to the most important point about writing rules down in general. The only form of governance completely aligned with nature and natural law is self-governance. Keep that in mind. Rules being written down and even enforced on a case-by-case basis does not make self-governance unnatural. We may feel like it does, but rules being written down and enforced does not make self-governance unnatural. It does not make rule enforcement natural from from human to human rule enforcement natural. A group of people living near each other can observe just how things go over time. And they can, in turn, write down some basic principles that everybody seems to already follow, and it seems to bear good fruit, that everybody follows these principles, right? Some philosophically minded person or a group of people observe, know the history, they see, and they choose to write down some basic rules, principles, guidelines, community guidelines, um, that people are following and that are already bearing good fruit. But here's the critical distinction between what we've been conditioned to believe and what's true. If the rules that they are writing down are indeed morally sound rules, if they are a genuine expression of natural law, then it's not necessary that they be written down at all. They are already operational. They are already true. Nature is observable. Natural law is observable by any individual who has eyes to see and ears to hear. No natural law or a natural law principle needs to be written down for it to have binding effect on 100% of the population at all times. Just like gravity doesn't need to be written down or explained to anybody to be just as binding as the rest of the natural law. The people who wish that they could fly and disregard gravity within their own natural vessel, organic vessel, that they could fly as a human being and not a bird. These people, no matter how intensely they wish it, do not alter the binding nature of whatever we call gravity, one iota. And I know, gravity, to all my esoteric people, gravity, is a dirty word and something wants to go, but gravity doesn't really exist. It's just magnetism. Sure. No problem. I'm whatever we call gravity that we know, you can't fly because of that. As a human being, as you know, in your organic natural vessel, you can't just fly, right? That thing that makes things fall is it. You don't have to write it down for it to be binding to 100% of the beings and objects in existence at all times in all places. Similarly, people who don't like that morality is objective, people that want to reject the objectivity of moral of the like universal moral code or God's moral code, however you want to look at it. Those who wish that initiating violence against innocent people was not a universally bad act, and they wish it really bad. They wish it so strongly. Those people, by wishing that natural law is that morality is subjective, do not alter the binding nature of God's laws in the moral field. You can now with your body, you can initiate violence. Your free will is intact, right? But it is universally recognized as bad to initiate violence against innocent people. Not by human beings. It's recognized as bad by consciousness, by the fundament of this 3D space. Maybe all space. I don't know. I'm in the 3D space right now. Consciousness is the fundament of this place. The essence of everything is consciousness. And consciousness recognizes the initiation of violence as wrong. And if you want to disagree, you're wrong in your assessment. And you will learn one day why you are wrong. At least I pray that you learn. And here is, and I don't say that often, but I'm confident here. I'm very confident here. Okay, initiating violence, initiating harm, is wrong, and you're wrong if you think otherwise. With the presumption of we're talking about against innocent people, not against somebody who's getting ready to like harm your daughter or something. Okay, and here is where things get wonky. Here's where things get sinful. Okay, and I'm using that word half in jest, but also half to wake you up. I know it's been 53 minutes. We still got a little bit to go, but I need to hammer this home. This was a great conversation, and it made me really dig deep into what I actually think here. So here's where it becomes sinful to adopt the mindset that because a rule is written down, the rule is now more legitimate, or the rule is now legitimate, right? Because moral principles are now codified in the United States Code, criminal code, or something. They carry great authority, or a greater authority than nature. Because the moment that mindset really takes hold, someone can reference a code section 123 in their little code book, to justify things like putting human beings in cages for some arbitrary amount of time that they determine themselves. Right? The written code has consumed the natural law it claims to represent, because real punishments are divvied out for fake monetary value, fake debt. Fictional concepts played as games as we play our roles land real human beings in real steel cages. And the religion of man's authority is now fully installed. Clip that. Now, there are only two real sins, and really it's all just one. It's all just theft. Some form of stealing, taking something that you have no right to take, is the only real one sin. But I like to say it in the way that there's really two sins, and that is theft and murder. That's it, though. Everything else is a form of one of those or another. Okay? When you harm somebody's body who's innocent, you're not stopping them as a threat to you or anything. You choose to harm somebody's body because they're you're feeling emotional. You are stripping them of their freedom to be comfortable in their own body, which they own. Right? It's the same principle as vandalizing or damaging someone's property or causing someone's property value to go down super fast or something like that. They own their body. They have a right to feel comfortable in their body, and now you have caused their uh, agony within their body, and you had no right to do so. That's theft. You're taking someone's freedom, right? When you take a life, that's the phrase that we use, right? When you kill, we say you take someone's life. And we call it taking a life not just because your lifespan excuse me, we call it taking a life not because the murderer's lifespan somehow gets longer, but only because your actions resulted in the loss of a life you had no right to take. You took it. Property damage is theft of someone's ability to use what they built, what they acquired by, you know, natural lawful means. Rolling up in somebody's house, with bad intentions and a gun and a Bible, with a reading a verse from the Bible saying, actually, I have a divine right to be here, and so I'm going to use this gun to kick you out of your house. It's now my house. Actually, I'm going to kick you out of my house now with this gun, and I kick them out with coercion. That's wrong, right? You can't just roll up in somebody's house, quote scripture, and then use coercion to kick them out of their house. That's wrong in every language at all times because it's initiating theft. It is sinful. Not because the government wrote it down, but because morality is objective. And morality being objective does not mean preference equals objective morality. By the way, this is just an aside, but it's very important, so I wrote it into my script. Preference is what you want, what you desire. Whereas morality is what the universe already has laws about, binding laws. Confusing the two is the root of pretty much every complexity game that's played against the objectivity of moral law. The fact that language gets complicated when we try to describe every possible scenario does not make the law itself uncertain. It makes language imprecise. But natural law remains the law, and not just of the land, remains the law of the universe. Right? The laws of the universe are already binding before they get spoken about or understood. Just like I said, gravity was already binding before somebody named it. Newton named it. Thermodynamics was already operational before we formalized the field of study. The measurement of whether something aligns with natural law, natural moral law, of course, comes from its fruits. You shall know them by their fruits. And that's true, whether that's biblical or not. It was already true before it was written in the Bible. And it will be true long after every code book that will ever exist is done being written. You shall know something by its fruits, what it produces, reproduces, what it perpetuates, what it brings forth and maintains and introduces and whatnot. You shall know it by its fruits. Now, as you know, there's this metaphor of the wake of the ship, right? The wake of the ship metaphor is that the ship is now. The wake, or the two parallel lines of waves that go in opposite directions and kind of spread out in a Y formation, the further you get from the wake of the ship, represent time. Okay, wave, one direction of the waves represents the past. The other one represents the future. Now is the present. Is the ship? Pardon me. And the ship is here. Right. The present moment is where the change lives. You can't fix the past. The past is already fixed. Right. You can't design the future. Your intentions are not necessarily carried too many moments after you've done the action in which the intentions were like heading in that direction. Where you had the intention, you do the action. Those intentions do not just perpetuate themselves in nature; they dissolve. In examining right now, which stories are running in your inner storyteller that make the fictional feel real? Money and man's authority, lab coats, police uniforms, politician suits, right? Whatever makes the fictional feel real in your inner storyteller, whatever makes the coerced feel voluntary, whatever makes the artificial feel natural, has to be examined. Because the religion of monetary value only persists because enough people, enough present moment consciousnesses are running the stories that make it feel legitimate. And then the change doesn't require a revolution, right? It requires enough people examining their own doing, their own karma, honestly, and honestly enough to stop giving the fiction the energy that it needs to feel real to the children who do not know anything of anything. What story are you willing to live? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so very much for hanging out with your boy. I am going to see you all tomorrow and then for the next episode. And then Wednesday, we are back with Sarah Cross. I think that's just going to stay for a while. We just going to have me, Sarah Cross doing the thing. We're going to, we'll spill the tea. Okay? We got the tea featuring Sarah Cross on Wednesdays here at the in the Inner Storyteller live podcast studio. Thank you all so very much. Please let me know in the comments what story you are willing to live when it comes to the religion of monetary value. Much love, and I'll see y'all tomorrow. Peace.